Okay, this is Frances. I'm back. My entire team's shut down. Not sure what happened. Sorry about that.
No worries. We're all here. So I see it's 1:31. Do we have enough people to start?
Yes, Bev, I think we do have a quorum.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm sure you're as happy as I am that we didn't have to be out traveling the roads on a day like this. Zoom does come in handy sometimes. I'd like to welcome everybody to the January meeting of the Housing Policy Advisory Committee. And we do have a quorum, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. And was a press release sent out?
Yes, Bev, it was. And let me just interject a moment. This meeting is being transcribed and recorded.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
If we could go around the room, and I don't know, Kay, if you would be willing to maybe call names that are on your screen as we go along so that we can do it in an orderly fashion. My name is Bev Merrill. I work at Welcome House, and I am the urban homeless representative and the chair of the committee.
I am Kay McAfee. I'm a housing policy and program advisory member here at KHC. Many of you all spoke with me via email or on the phone. So hello and thank you all for being here. I have first on the screen Adrian Bush.
Hi everyone, I'm Adrian Bush with the Homeless and Housing Coalition of Kentucky.
Ann Price.
Hello everyone, Ann Price with People's Self-Help Housing.
Vicki Bowling.
Hi, I'm sorry, I just had to find the mute button. My name is Vicki Bowling and I'm with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Public Assistance Program Specialist.
Lana Brewer.
Good afternoon, Lona Brewer. I serve as proxy for Secretary Rebecca Goodman of the Energy and Environment Cabinet.
Buddy Kittle.
Hi, Buddy Kittle with Mortgage Bankers Association of Kentucky.
Gary Kendall.
Hi, I'm Carrie Kendall with Kentucky Housing Corporation.
Kathy, I'm going to mispronounce the last name with DLG. You want to correct me on the last name?
Hi, Kathy Figglestaller with the Department for Local Government, representing the Commissioner Dennis King.
Brad Nelson.
Hi, I'm Brad Nelson. I'm with Goodwill Industries, and I am the housing specialist.
Cedric Irvin.
Hello, my name is Cedric Irvin Jr. I'm with the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. Sorry about my background.
You're big, Cedric. Kalia Rayner.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kalia Rayner. I'm the Senior Manager for Housing at Goodwill Industries of Kentucky.
Carla Hale.
Carla Hale, Kentucky Housing Corporation.
Kelly Reynolds.
Kelly Reynolds, Kentucky Housing Corporation.
Kim Boyd. Kim Boyd Lane.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kimberly Boyd Lane. I am the Director of Community-Based Career Services here at Goodwill Industries of Kentucky, and we really appreciate the invitation to kind of go over our programs with you today.
Deborah Knight.
Hi, I'm Deborah Knight. I'm with HUD.
Francis. I'm gonna chop up the last name.
It looks a lot scarier than it is. My name is Frances Krumholtz, and I'm with the Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging.
Thank you, Frances. My dear friend Logan Haynes.
Hey everybody, Logan Haynes here. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Manufactured Housing Institute.
Thank you. And Dean Lloyd.
Kentucky Transportation Cabinet.
And then we have a couple callers, one phone number ending in 0532. You want to unmute? And
yeah, this is Christina Espinosa with the Human Development Institute.
Okay. Let's see here. Mary Schmidt.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Crowley Schmidt with Francis's counterpart at the Area Agency on Aging and Independent Living here in Lexington, Kentucky.
Thank you. And our new member, Michael Gardner.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is I'm Michael Gardner with Rebound, Inc. I'm the Housing Production Director.
Mike Turner.
Mike Turner with the Housing Authority of Burkesville. I'm an Executive Director.
Molly Tate. Molly Tate is just streaming, which she likes to always say, I'm just streaming the meeting. Olivia McCowan.
Hi, I'm Olivia McCowan. I'm with the Home Builders Association of Kentucky.
Brian Perry.
Good afternoon, Brian Perry with the Department of Director of Government Relations and serve as the proxy for the Commissioner.
Craig Potts.
Hello. Sorry, my mic was messed up a little bit there. Craig Potts, Director of the Kentucky Heritage Council.
We'll be hearing a special welcome a little bit later. Mr. Charles President.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charles President. I'm with HUD, and I'm serving as the Field Office Director there. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you and welcome. Rob Jones.
Hi, I'm Rob Jones. I'm the CEO of Audubon Area Community Services, and I'm here with Lori Reed, who is our Housing Director for Audubon Area Community Services.
Scott McReynolds.
I'm Scott McReynolds with the Housing Development Alliance in Hazard, Kentucky.
Thank you. Deputy Wendy Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wendy Smith, Deputy Executive Director over Housing Programs here at KHC. Good to see y'all.
And my friend, Lisa Williams.
Hi, I'm Lisa Lee Williams with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, sitting in proxy for Secretary Eric Friedlander.
Thank you, Bev. That concludes the introduction.
All right. Thanks for doing that, Kay. I wanted to check at this time to see if anyone who is not a committee member but may be in attendance wish to raise an issue that's not on the agenda. All right. So we'll move on to introduce Charles President. He is HUD Louisville's new field office director. He joined Rebound Inc. in February. No, wait a minute, I'm reading. Am I reading? You're going to do your own introduction. Okay, please do your own introduction.
That is just fine. Good afternoon again. My name is Charles President, and I'm serving as the Field Office Director for the Louisville Field Office. I just started, I think December 4th was my first day here. So I moved here from Florida, from Jacksonville. Before I joined Field and Policy Management Division, where I am now as the Field Office Director, I have 16 previous years with HUD in the Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. So I'm sure everyone here is familiar with some housing regulations or guidance. So I've worked diligently with a lot of partners throughout Florida and Kentucky in my previous career, but I am excited to be here now. And hopefully I can, solicit participation and, hopefully partnership and collaboration with you all on various efforts. I do invite you all, if you need anything from the Department of HUD, feel free to reach out to me. Of course, you already know Debbie Knight, who's on the call today from our office, and David Rayleigh as well. And, so feel free to reach out to us. I look forward to learning a lot about all the agencies here on the phone today. And that's it for now. I can, definitely here for any questions, but if you need anything, feel free to just ask questions, but I definitely want to work with you all.
Great, thank you and welcome.
All right, thank you.
I'd also like to welcome our new member who represents Urban Development, Michael Gardner. He is with Rebound Inc. He joined Rebound Inc. in February 2021, and as Rebound's Housing Production Director, Mr. Gardner is responsible for developing and implementing housing production programs that improve access to affordable housing, reuse of abandoned properties, infill new construction, and neighborhood revitalization. Mr. Gardner is a graduate of the University of Louisville and holds a master's degree in urban planning, and he is also a licensed realtor in the state of Kentucky. So we want to say welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to work with you all and eager to participate and be involved with this committee. So thank you.
Next, if everyone could review the minutes of our last meeting held October 24th. And if there's a motion and second to approve, if you could please say your name after it for the minutes so that they're sure to get the right person.
Christina Espinosa, I motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
Mary Crowley Schmidt, I second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor to approve, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Next, Wendy, if you could give us legislative updates.
Yeah, and I won't spend too much time because I know Adrian Bush, I think from HHCK, will also be giving you all some updates. One that I'd hoped to be able to report some movement on was that the governor's original budget had included $10 million in a one-time infusion into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which KHC administers. Right now, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is funded via a $6 per transaction real estate transaction fee. It's a flat amount. It was passed maybe in 2005 or even longer ago, and it hasn't changed. And so with costs rising and that flat fee not going up, and with the number of transactions going down because people are not selling homes and paying that fee, we are seeing declines in the receipts for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. In fact, our last 2 quarters have been some of our lowest ever. Not the lowest ever, but pretty darn close. However, the legislators' kind of response to the governor's budget, their budget, zeroed that out. So I'm going to leave it to Adrian to share more about legislation that is actually happening. But I did want to share with you all while we are at a point as a state where the supply of affordable and middle income housing units, I want to make that clear, the supply of affordable and middle income rental and home ownership units is gravely scarce. We do not have enough. The resources that we are expected to use to address those issues, particularly for the poorest Kentuckians, are diminishing. Not trying to be a big downer, just I want this committee to know that, because it is a real concern to us, because the supply shortage is our greatest concern at KHC. And I'll entertain questions, not that I have a lot of answers, but I'm happy to turn it over to Adrienne if she wants to dig into other legislative matters.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and get started then if there are no questions for Wendy. The Kentucky legislature came back into session for the full 60-day budget session, the long session as we call it, on January 2nd. So we are now in week 4 of that. Right now, budget negotiations are, to the extent that they're happening very much behind closed doors. As Wendy alluded to, the House Majority Caucus has released its budget finally. I believe it was last week, and there is no appropriation for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund or the Rural Housing Trust Fund as well. However, I want to caution folks that just because a program or something we care about was not in this version of the budget doesn't mean that we should all just pack up and not do any advocacy for the rest of the session. This is very much a starting point. The Senate typically takes a longer time with the budget, and the House at this point has not even, it's just been introduced. It hasn't been heard in committee. It hasn't had any of the 3 required readings on the floor. There will be floor amendments. We are still very early in the process as far as the budget goes. So there's that. As far as other things, other pieces of legislation that are moving very quickly and that make this session feel like it's already been going on for 2 months, I will cover those. I'll start with the ugly first, and that is, from our perspective at the Homeless and Housing Coalition Kentucky, House Bill 5. This is an omnibus bill which its stated goal is to address crime, primarily from a Louisville perspective. The bill sponsors and co-sponsors started off, it was kind of a group of 8 East End legislators from Louisville. And this process has gone, kind of on for a while. It started off with a press conference in September. They presented a bill draft in December, at which point we received confirmation that some real problematic housing and homeless provisions, or anti-housing and anti-homeless provisions, were rolled into this omnibus bill. Real quickly, the majority of the sections included are derived from what this think tank called the Cicero Institute, and I use the term think tank advisedly. It was founded by a venture capitalist back in 2016. They have spent the last few years promulgating copy and paste legislation across states where they think that this legislation might have a chance of taking hold. Here in Kentucky, they rolled it into the omnibus crime bill. While the ostensible goal of the bill is to improve public safety and not address the root causes of housing insecurity, it will nonetheless impact Kentuckians who are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity writ large. One section of the bill bans street camping, so that includes cots, beds, sleeping bags, in tents, also vehicles, which is particularly troubling for our rural areas of the state, and our urban areas of the state too, really everywhere. It talks about like where people cannot be sleeping outside, and they have a laundry list. It involves criminal penalties with $250 fines attached, up to a Class B misdemeanor, up to 90 days in jail. And the real issue, our problem with this bill is existing outside is not a crime, especially when we have a housing supply shortage, as Wendy just said, and not a robust shelter system across the state. In many counties, we do not even have a single shelter, let alone shelters with enough beds to take everybody who needs them. Section 18 is a provision that, as it was initially drafted, would have jeopardized $79 million in federal funding towards homeless assistance. Essentially, it's designed to bar housing first oriented programs from receiving funding and divert it elsewhere. We pushed back on that. The latest version strikes the word federal. It just says that state funding cannot go to programs unless they facilitate access to behavioral health rehabilitative programs, which is much more in line with how Housing First programs actually operate. Bottom line is we're relieved to see the removal of federal funding from this section, but the whole section is still completely unnecessary and should be removed. Section 19 authorizes local governments to create designated camping zones for unsheltered folks with potable water and portable toilets, but provides no funding to do so. Section 20 would require local governments and law enforcement to explicitly enforce this law, and the Attorney General could bring suit on them if they did not. There are some other sections that are not part of the Cicero template. Section 21 expands the standard ground components of Kentucky law to include people unlawfully street camping as a justifiable defense for violence. This is really problematic. While Kentucky courts liberally interpret this clause already, it just further stigmatizes people experiencing homelessness as potentially violent criminals, when evidence indicates that people who are unsheltered are more likely to be victims of crime, not perpetrators. Sections 10 and 11 of the bill further criminalize rental damages. Thanks to Senate Bill 11 from a few sessions ago, rental damages now fall in the misdemeanor category if they are over $1,000. This bill moves the threshold back to $500. Same arguments that we had back in 2019, 2020, and 2021 still apply. It doesn't account for security deposits. It conflicts with jurisdictions that have adopted URLTA, the Uniform Residential Landlord-Tenant Act. And it further stigmatizes renters as potential criminals as opposed to, people in communities. So process updates, it was introduced in the House on January 9th. It was heard in the House Judiciary Committee on January 18th. They passed it. Theoretically, it has enough readings. It could pass on the floor today. On the House floor, however, there have been 12 floor amendments filed, and this is going to get messy. Latest that we've heard is that it won't be passed today, but potentially tomorrow. Kay graciously included a slide with some calls to actions that will hopefully be live when she sends out the slide deck after the meeting is over. Okay. Another couple of bills that are moving very quickly that have negative implications for housing security across the state include HB 18 and SB 25. Both of those are intended to prohibit local governments from enacting bans on discrimination based on source of income. That is a lot of words and clauses, but basically what this is in response to is in Louisville in 2020, they passed an ordinance that banned source of income discrimination in housing transactions, saying that if somebody had a continuum of care voucher or a Section 8 voucher or a HUD-VASH voucher, that landlords couldn't automatically discriminate against them by saying, we don't accept vouchers. Didn't mean that they had to take them, but it meant that they needed to treat voucher holders the same as they would the rest of their rental applicant pool. In this year, over the last year, Lexington has worked to try to get a similar ordinance passed. They have been in the process. They have had lots of public comment and chances for folks to weigh in. And then in the fall, we started hearing that legislators who represent parts of Lexington, but actually are in other places like Winchester or Paris, would be introducing legislation that would put a stop to this, that would ban cities, preempt them from being able to enact local ordinances like this. So SB 25 is the Senate version. It was heard in committee, passed out of committee at the end of last week. We are trying to work to educate the sponsor about what the ordinances do and don't do, and figure out if there's a way where all parties can kind of exist peacefully. HB 18 is the House's version. It also passed committee, the Senate bill passed on Wednesday. And then the House bill passed its committee on Thursday. It potentially could be passed on the House floor as soon as today. So we also have some calls to action on that. The bottom line is cities need as many tools as possible. Source of income discrimination ordinances are not like a super radical idea. They've been enacted since the 1980s in different states like North Dakota and Utah and Oklahoma. And bottom line is cities should be able to make those choices and be held accountable by their voters at the local level. So I do want to highlight one good piece of legislation that is moving, and that is a bill around access for people experiencing homelessness. We've been working to expand access to identity documents for the past 4 or 5 sessions with some success. This would build on that. It would just establish that people experiencing homelessness do not have to pay a fee to get a copy of their birth certificate, provided they were born in Kentucky. We can't control other states, right? This also passed the House State Government Committee on Thursday and is awaiting a House floor vote. There are lots of housing bills that have been filed. So far, we do try to keep track of all of them. I do want, there's one more that I'm not sure is going to move yet, but is very intriguing, and that is House Bill 102 from Representative Doan in Northern Kentucky, which really seeks to be a YIMBY bill around modernizing our zoning and allowing for gentle density. And it has some really interesting components. It has been assigned to the House Local Government Committee. And we are excited that this is, that the legislature wants to have this type of conversation. So with that, I'll point you to our bill tracker, which will be linked. As I said, we do our best to keep it updated, and lots of interesting things happening in the Kentucky General Assembly. That I'll take any questions.
I'll just share, this is not just with relation to legislation, but in general, KHC has been having some conversations internally about the fact that we really feel like it's urgent and essential that we as an organization talk about the need for more supply, affordable and middle income housing. I'm just going to bang that gong everywhere I go, because we are seeing the downstream pressures on our low income Kentuckians because they are competing for what we call naturally occurring affordable housing. They're competing with middle income households. As our people are trying to buy a home. My concern about a lot of the legislation that's come to fore is, with the exception of what Representative Jones is proposing, which would allow for a lot more density, a lot less local restriction on what gets built. As an urban planner, I have mixed feelings about it, but it is very intriguing. Aside from that, nothing is going to add to our supply, and that is our biggest need. That would be the greatest contribution to helping poor Kentuckians, helping homeless Kentuckians, reducing fair housing issues. I'm just disappointed that we've got all of these bills coming to the fore, but none of them are about getting us more units, with the exception of House Bill 102.
Agreed. Any other thoughts or comments? Right. Lisa, I don't want to put you on the spot. I didn't know if you felt prepared to say a few words about the state plan amendment that the cabinet may be filing. And if not,
well, I can give you 3 words. In response to SGAR 72, the cabinet was charged to develop some programming around waiver support programming around several different shortfalls in our 1915C waiver support for those with mental health issues and substance abuse issues in particular. And so we've gone through the listing stage. Let me see if I can. We've gone through the listing stage. We've put together a proposed plan that has been approved by CMS for Medicaid and Medicare services. And we're in the process now of doing some local listening to build out the program, the various programs. So as it relates to housing, homelessness in particular, there will be a housing component to support permanent supportive housing, long-term housing support. What that looks like, we haven't fully designed it yet, but it's encouraging to know that there will be additional resources through this program or through this waiver, through this amendment that will support housing. We are very much aware, and I was told we're working with KHC or one of you all on identifying the gap in availability of housing. I know that's the big thing. We can always find some money, or not always, but we often find money to house without the opportunity or the resources to actually put someone in an appropriate place. So that's my high level muddled through what they told me to tell you. But I will say that there are a lot of resources out on the website. I'll actually drop them in the link. There's some Q&A about 1915I that's very informative. You can get to all of the PowerPoint presentations and language, so you can do your own self-study. How about that? Is that okay?
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Frances Krumholtz from Nesterly Intergenerational Home Sharing. She's going to do
I believe we have a hand up. Cedric, were you wanting to ask a question about SPA or legislative updates? I think you raised your hand. Okay, I want to make sure.
Yes, I had a question. So what I do with the Kentucky Commission, I'm a supervisor over the enforcement branch, which investigates housing discrimination, employment, and public accommodation. Regarding that House Bill 18 and SB 25, and I don't know if you know this or not, but taking out Section 8, are they also taking away other income outside of just regular income, like, for example, church or something like that? Like if the church helps you with your rent, and can they deny that as well? Is that what they're looking at? It's just they can deny any income but regular income, basically.
Sure. So the bills are not identical, which makes it tricky. But HB 18 explicitly says any federal housing program, so that would include Section 8, HUD-VASH, any continuum of care, permanent supportive housing, or ES or emergency solutions grant, rapid rehousing voucher. But it does not identify child support income, disability income, or anything like that. It just says landlords no city shall pass an ordinance requiring landlords to participate in a federal housing program. The Senate version of the bill explicitly names just the Section 8 program. And so again, other types of income could still be protected as part of a city's local ordinance. But both pieces of bill, or both bills, we are opposing for obvious reasons. But yeah, we're thinking about a lot of strategies around implementation should this pass.
All right, thank you. Just reason I asked is just so we can get ready for some possible phone calls. We don't enforce the protection of income because it's not enforced federally or state, and we're a state. Right. But it's something to get ready for as far as phone calls.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Francis, if you could present on Nestorly intergenerational home sharing.
Sure thing. And thanks for having me today. And I'll start off kind of by giving a little bit of background. I actually work for the Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging. Nestorly operates in a few different places around the country, so I'll get back to a little bit more about them, but just thinking about us and what we do, very generally speaking, our mission is to inform and support people as they navigate the experience of aging or disability. I know we've got a Kentucky, one of the area agencies on aging is represented in this committee as well, which is wonderful. AAAs were established under the Older Americans Act in 1973. So we administer and fund programs that support older adults and folks with disabilities, as well as their families and caregivers. We do advocacy work. We do public education and outreach. Next slide shows a few of the specific services that we can provide for people. So if you think about things like Meals on Wheels, getting folks connected with home health aides, adult day services, all those types of things. We also administer the National Family Caregiver Support Program for people who are in our region. We provide case management for about 12,000 people. And like I mentioned, we do lots of community education and outreach as well. Next slide, I start to dig into housing shortage. So these are national numbers. I'm sure you're all kind of familiar. I'll give a little bit of flavor on the next slide to kind of what it looks like in Central Ohio. And the 54,000 is an old number, but it's the most recent number that I've been able to find, that we are 54,000 affordable housing units short. As of 2020, we had about 2.1 million people in our metro area. We are expected to be up to 3 million people by 2050. So we're really experiencing very rapid growth. If local regional planners estimate that we would be needing to build 14 to 21,000 new units each year. In 2020, we built fewer than 12,000. And I actually just read this week that the 2023 numbers for how many new units we built was right around 5,500. So we are not trending in the correct direction. As for my agency, as you all know, this really impacts people who are already precarious for one reason or another. It impacts them even more. We participate and we've got a countywide property tax assistance program that's for homeowners who are 60 or older. It's one-time assistance if they are at double the federal poverty level or less. That's one-time assistance that we've been able to provide. This past year, that was really important because lots of people's property taxes doubled because of this growth and just because of what the housing market is looking like right now. We also have a housing assistance program that is focused on one-time assistance for renters who are older adults that are in our region. Thinking about housing costs that are kind of specific to older adults and kind of some hidden cost considerations. We've talked about those increasing property taxes, necessary repairs and upkeep for folks' home, accessibility updates. If there's a few steps that lead up to the house and we need to install a ramp or we need to install handbars in the restroom, those are all things that can kind of sneak up on folks if they are not necessarily preparing for it. We're seeing demographic shifts. So on the next slide, these are, oh, look at that weird little arrow. You just never know sometimes how things are going to come through. So anyway, these numbers are for our statewide here in Ohio. So we're expecting our 60 and older population to grow by about a third. And we know that 90% of those people want to stay in their long-time homes as they age. Kind of coupled with this, we have at least 27,000 spare bedrooms in our metro area. And that is gauged pretty conservatively, in my opinion. So it's one bedroom per person in the house, plus a spare bedroom, and then any bedrooms after that is considered a spare bedroom in that number. So like my husband and I, as an example, we would have to have 4 bedrooms in our home before one of those would be considered spare. So we know that there are a lot of people who have raised their children in a home. Their children are grown and flown, but they don't want to leave the house. They're happy to stay there. And so we really saw kind of all of those numbers and factors coming into play to recognize that home sharing could really be one of the tools in our toolbox. Home sharing is just an arrangement where 2 or more unrelated people share a house or an apartment. So a lot of people have already home shared, even if they're not necessarily thinking about it as home sharing. And for the Area Agency on Aging, we really wanted to find a partner who could provide a little bit more safety and stability to that. Next slide is our little intro slide for Nesterly. That's when we partnered with them. We can zoom right through this to the next slide. Oh, these poor arrows, y'all. I'm sorry. That just looks so silly. There's little diagrams in there. Anyway, some of the benefits of home sharing, is additional income for the host. We've got more affordable rent for the guest, a helping hand around the house. So, kind of our dream, our ideal host-guest situation is an older host and a young adult guest. So you're getting those intergenerational connections as well, and an opportunity, again, to get some additional help around the house. And then that social component and companionship as well. It's, the social interactions on their own are so good, but particularly for intergenerational home shares, there's, lots of evidence that can help eliminate ageism and just does lots of good things for both parties. I'll do a little run through for kind of how Nesterly itself works. And also anyone who wants to browse, you can just go to nesterly.com. You can see what it's looking like in different regions. So we're Central Ohio, but they're also in Boston, they're in Louisville, they're expanding to some other areas. So you can kind of take a peek. But to get involved, it's free to create an account, and that's either as a host or a guest. They'll ask you, kind of what are you looking for in an ideal home share agreement. The host gets to outline kind of their general house rules, or what's available, what's not available at their house. Next slide, let's see. There's in-app messaging, so all of the communication initially happens online. It does require an email address and ability to navigate internet. Sometimes that can be a point of friction in our area. There's an opportunity to do a video chat, so a really good way to get a little bit better of a feel of how you might get along with somebody before you move along to an in-person meeting. And then next slide is kind of the home share agreement. So the home share agreements are legally binding leases, but they read much more plain language, and they're fill in the blanks. So they are coaching hosts and guests to talk through a lot of common potential pitfalls in a home sharing agreement. So they're talking about things like, what are expectations around quiet hours, around guests, around where we're going to park the car. Does someone have a pet allergy? Like, are we sharing meals together? Are we doing our own thing? Any of those options are viable through the platform, but they just want to make sure that folks are on the same page before they move into a home share agreement. Next slide. So then once you book through the website, Nesterly runs background checks for both host and guest. They handle payment processing. A really important distinction is that this is not for short-term stays. So we're not competing with some of those, short-term other sharing websites we all know and love. This really is designed for a longer home share. So it has to be for at least 30 days, can be up to a year. There's opportunity to renew if it's going well. There's also an opportunity, there's a lot of built-in flexibility if either side wants or needs to call things off early. As long as you give 30-day notice, then Nesterly will help facilitate that early ending as well. Average that we've seen in Central Ohio is 6 months. So people are staying for a significant period of time, but more flexibility and more short term than a traditional lease. Let's see how the next slide translates. Sometimes it gets wonky. Since we've had some wonky ones, I'm curious to see what'll happen. All right, a little wonky, not terrible. These are just some of the Nesterly features that, again, for our area agency on aging, that we're really kind of drawn to. So again, they're doing identity verification and doing background checks and checking references for hosts and guests. The agreement is really flexible and customizable. There's ongoing customer support. I do like a smidgen of that, but the vast majority of that goes to Nesterly. They're also handling payment processing. Let's see. That is basically all that I covered. That was like a real quick overview. So that those were kind of, the decisions or the factors that were at play that made us want to invest in home sharing. I'll be really candid that we're still trying to figure out what the path forward looks like. We thought, this is going to be a great solution. People are going to be so excited about this because rent is really outrageous right now. And for even for folks who have lived in their home for a long time, they're having trouble affording the home that they've been in for decades already. We've had a pretty low adoption rate. So last year we had 4 home shares through the program. We're still trying to build some momentum there, but we're, I think, always being creative. And I've talked to people across the country. I guess I'm talking to people across the country today. But a lot of folks are kind of looking at home sharing as an alternative. But that's kind of where we are now. So happy to take any questions. I know that was kind of quick. I don't know if I'm in charge of, Lisa.
Yeah, is there any pre-community work, building networks to kind of overcome the stranger danger concept?
No, and we have tried a little bit, kind of in addition to, just general marketing. We had partnership. We've got a pretty robust network of villages in Central Ohio. So that's another idea that kickstarted in Boston, but just kind of this idea of neighbors helping neighbors, basically, for folks who are still living in their homes, older adults who either need volunteer support, social support. We thought that home sharing would be great for them. And so we did try to host a few mixers of like younger folks who maybe needed a place to stay, were invited like through these community agencies. And again, turnout was low, interest was low. And so we haven't been able to invest like a ton of energy or resources into that. I am our main point person, and I run a whole other program also. So, we've been doing some of that work. We work with student groups, and we work with a lot of community agencies that are more directly connected to older adults as well. And I don't know, we haven't found the secret sauce quite yet.
Oh dear.
Just a quick question. Is there a cost to your agency for this partnership with Nesterly?
Yes. So we pay an annual licensing fee that I'm not allowed to disclose. But yeah, we pay them on an annual basis.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Francis, I just had a question in regards to background checks.
Mm-hmm.
Is there certain backgrounds that you do not, that would not be allowed to come into this community share?
So the background checks that get run are National Criminal Search, Sex Offender Registry, Global Watch List Search, Address History Search, and Social Security Verification. What happens if one or several of those gets flagged is basically that, as far as I know, I think it's just like a flag of like this one pinged back, and that will be communicated back to the other party. If they choose to still move forward, they can, but we want to be sure to give them that information. So that's my understanding for how that part works.
Okay, thank you.
And if things go bad, your agency is not held liable.
That's another big draw to partnering with another agency. And I will say, we have partnered with them since fall of 2019 is when we launched. We have had a couple of sticky situations, but it's always been able to be resolved just through the work of Nesterly and sometimes with the helping hand of my agency. So again, I think having that kind of unbiased third party whose primary goal is for a successful home share and whose secondary goal is just for things to be as safe and clean and forward moving as possible. I think that can go a long way too.
Francis, one quick question. I know you mentioned you talked to individuals across the country, and there was a recent article actually from London that talked about concerns that were shared with a renters union, specifically about home sharing. With the housing crisis, applications are doubling for home sharing. typically sharers are younger than the homeowner. And so there's some concern about exploitation for the support work that is provided in those agreements in exchange for payment to live there. In addition to that, the homeowner as well as the sharer pay fees to some of these software, matching services. So any thoughts, any sticky situations in concern to specifically that 10 to 15 hours of support work, really chores that the sharer is providing for the owner?
Yeah. I'm going to circle back to that. I'm glad that you mentioned the fees because that was something that I forgot to mention. There's a one-time booking fee through Nesterly that both the host and the guest pay. That depends on the length of stay, but that ranges between $95 and $195. And then there's an ongoing service fee of about 2.5%. So in my mind, that's very reasonable and fair. The other thing with the home share agreement, we haven't seen, again, at least in my region, there hasn't been pushback or exploitation. It is something that does get documented in the home share agreement ahead of time. So they're making sure they're outlining how many hours per week would you expect that someone might be spending on this task, and then specifically kind of what is the rent reduction. Occasionally, I will talk to folks who are interested in hosting, and they'll say, I don't even need any rent. I could just use some help around the house. And we really try to discourage that. Establishing that rent and that monthly payment, even if it ends up being reduced, even if there's a significant reduction, it really just defines those boundaries so much better than saying, well, I just need help around the house. So we do try to get particular about number of hours and kind of the monetary value of those hours as a reduction of rent rather than as a swap.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't follow the 2% fee. Like, what would it, I don't know if there is a typical rent, but what would it?
Let me pull out my little calculator because my brain's just not good like that. So if someone's paying $500 a month in rent, then the 2.5% fee would be $1,250 a month. So that guest would end up paying $512.50.
Got it. There any other questions? Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. It's an interesting idea.
And my contact information is up there, so if anything comes up afterwards, feel free to give me an email or give me a call. I'll do my best to help. But otherwise, thanks for having me today. I'll go ahead and drop off if that works.
That'd be fine, yeah. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Good to meet you.
Same here. Bye. And next we have the Goodwill Housing Programs.
Yes, thank you. So good afternoon again. My name is Kalia, and I am the Senior Housing Manager for Goodwill Industries of Kentucky. I do have my lead specialist, Brad Nelson, on here as well, who will be helping me with just presenting information on our program. And I'm a little under the weather, so being able to sit up here and go through the whole entire thing, it kind of makes me a little winded. So bear with me. So I do want to kind of go over the housing program, or just kind of, obviously you all are aware of Goodwill. You could start with the first, housing instruction. Thank you. So you all are aware of Goodwill. Obviously, we are always trying to figure out the best way to help individuals with barriers. Barrier reduction is what we are known for in terms of employment, housing, transportation. Those are three of our main concerns when
What's
we're
the issue
dealing.
here?
Uh-oh. Everything okay?
I think we heard some background noise. If everyone can make sure they're on mute. All right, Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So we are obviously in the business of barrier reduction. So I was talking about our main 3 barriers that we try to just figure out how we can assist individuals that are disadvantaged, that either are disadvantaged and also maybe dealing with some disabilities that also add to the disadvantage of just being able to have quality life. And so in order to be able to maintain employment, oftentimes a lot of our individuals that come through our programs, come through our doors, have housing, issues or just, scenarios where they need that assistance. As, it has been said prior to us even getting on this call is, housing is an issue. And so we've created the housing program within Goodwill. It is primarily for individuals that do come through come through our Goodwill programming, and individuals that do have a career coach. They are then able to afforded the opportunity to be able to be a part of our housing program. And so we'll go into a little bit more of kind of the different phases that we've created. The first phase that we do have that I know Brad will kind of go into, we do have a 6-month program phase that we have where individuals are with us for 6 months. During that time, they are rent and utility free. And so all of the phases that we have created, though they have different time frames, they are all free utility and rent for individuals to be able to save, be able to work on the things that they need to work on in those 6 months with a financial coach, along with mental health specialists if they need that as well, so that they're able to move forward into independent housing, and also to obviously add to a better quality of life, moving on to be able to pursue whatever the next season phases of their life. The Goodwill Housing Program, let me just say, we probably started maybe about 4 years ago, and we had quite a few housing units. They were all scattered within kind of really the West End community, just because obviously the housing at that time was affordable, getting a lot of apartment complexes or housing units. We were able to have female and males to house, not necessarily together, but to be able to have housing for females and housing for males. These properties are drug and alcohol free. And so we try to maintain that so that they are also successful in staying focused and being able to, like I said, being able to work towards a better quality of life. Since that time frame, within the last year, we have downsized a whole lot, just because of other projects that we've had to do, and also just realizing that housing is really expensive, and so again, it's a big feat that we have tried to take on. Not to say that we're not kind of in the future thinking about these things, but we've just had to kind of take a step back and restructure some things, make some smarter connections with a lot of partnerships, government officials, those sorts of things, so that we could get the resources that we needed, instead of Goodwill just really kind of fitting the bill for all of these things. So in the beginning, for the past 3.5, 4 years, we've fit the bill. Obviously, the individuals that we have now that are living rent and utility free, we're paying their rent, we're paying all of those things so that they're able to live comfortably, safely, and then also so that they can save their money and don't have to worry about that component, so that when they can move on, they're able to have the funds that they need. So as you can imagine, spending probably almost $1 million on housing properties for individuals. So just having to kind of take a step back, look at those things. And so that's really kind of what we're doing. And so when we get to the end of the presentation, if anyone has any questions, or I can talk a little bit more about that as much as possible in terms of, what we look like for the future. So I'll let Brad kind of explain our different phases.
Go to the next slide. Again, I'm Brad Nelson. I am the housing specialist here at Goodwill. And we do have 3 different phases of housing. We have phase 2, which is that first slide. We have phase 3 and also phase 2.5. In order to come to the housing program, what you need to do is actually, you have to talk to a career coach. When they sit down and talk to a career coach at the Opportunity Center, the career coach will assess the client's needs and figure out what phase they would need to go to. The first slide that we have up now is the phase 2 housing. The phase 2 housing consists of Goodwill subsidized short-term housing with a credible housing partner. The housing partner usually are sober living houses or transitional houses. What our Goodwill team does, they go out to these houses and they look over the property and talk to the people that actually run the property and make sure they're actually suitable for our clients to actually go to. So that is actually phase 2 housing, and that is usually for 3 months or less. Goodwill will pay up to $1,500 per person, and that usually runs about 3 months. There are requirements that they have to qualify for to come to phase 2 housing. One of the requirements is they must be actively working with a career coach. The reason that's important because a career coach will actually will assess their needs and figure out what is best for the client and what can help the client succeed. Also, they need to complete soft skills 101, and they also need to be if they do not have a job when they go into phase 2 housing, they need to have an agreement with the career coach that they will actually get a job within the 30 days. The whole purpose of the Goodwill Housing is to make clients self-sufficient, and that's one of the steps of making the client self-sufficient is employment. You can go to the next slide. The next slide is phase 3 housing. Again, that the clients do need to talk to a career coach to go to. You can go back one step that slide. One of the requirements is you do have to talk to a career coach. Phase 3 housing, what we do is we actually do provide housing within Goodwill. Phase 3 housing usually is for 6 months. We do provide housing for Goodwill employees and also employees that are people that are employed outside of Goodwill. Two of the requirements that they need to come to phase 3 housing is they need to be employed for 90 days and they need to be clean and sober for 90 days. And we do randomly drug test the clients that are in our housing program. Also, before they come to the phase 3 housing program, they need to have the savings account established. One of the goals that we have with the phase 3 clients, we like the clients to save $2,500 within that 6 months. During that time, we will give them a financial coach. The financial coach will sit down with them, review their budget, how much money they need to spend a month, so they actually can get that $2,500 saved up at the end of the 6 months. If they do work for Goodwill, they will receive another $1,000 incentive for saving that $2,500. If they do not work for Goodwill, they will actually receive a $500 incentive for saving that $2,500 within that 6 months. Just another incentive to try to make the client successful. We do send them to a behavioral health assessment to make sure they actually can complete the program and not have any behavior issues while they're in the program. We do give random drug screens to all the clients to make sure they're on the right path. Now, if we do have a client that does relapse, we have that happen a lot of times. We do send them to treatment, and we do assist with that. Again, the whole purpose is to make the client self-sufficient. We want to help the client get to their goal. You can go to the phase 2.5. Do you want to add anything, Clea?
One thing I did want to add, we do background checks and credit checks. And so this really helps us to get a snapshot of the individual and what they're coming into the program with. Obviously, if they have evictions, if they have unpaid, LG&E bills and that sort of thing, obviously, we know that kind of working on a budget and kind of a financial plan to be able to help them get rid of those things as much as possible within the 6 months, because we know that obviously that could be a barrier for them to be able to move forward into their own independent housing.
Okay. And the last phase I want to talk about is housing phase 2.5. The housing phase 2.5 is a program for the Goodwill retail employees and the ones that work at Another Way program. They have to be working there for 2 weeks. And what it is these are clients that are not actually ready to come to the housing phase 3 program. Again, that the career coach will assess the client and make sure that the client is qualified for this program. The client needs to be employed with Goodwill for a minimum of 2 weeks and are actually working with Another Way or their career coach to come into the program. We do drug tests, and we do, and a lot of times with this 2.5 program is a good stepping stone for the client to come into phase 3 housing. While they're in phase 2.5 housing, they know what's expected of them. Usually at this time, what they start doing, they start saving money. We start looking for other options for them to really complete the program successfully. You can go to the next slide. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say, that's okay. And in this phase, they are with us for 90 days. So they can choose, if they meet the requirements for phase 3, can choose to move on with us or continue with us. Or at the end of the 90 days, they will then move forward into, their own independent housing, or, whatever that looks like for that individual.
You can go to the next slide. These are just examples of some of the properties that we have. All the properties that we have do come fully furnished. They are very nice properties. They are very well kept properties. And these are the total number of completions for last year. So also, you can go to the next slide. You can go to the next slide. The housing goal for 2024, we would like to have the expanded Goodwill housing to different counties, mainly Goodwill, mainly
Sorry,
it's
it's
that's okay.
a little bit, and I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. We would like to expand to Bowling Green, Lexington, and other parts of Louisville. This to kind of expand the program and help more people out that we can. We do assist 80% of the clients in housing to move in successful transitional unsubsidized housing, meaning they can move in on their own, paying their own rent without any help.
So we do currently have housing in Bowling Green. It is for females only. We haven't expanded to males. And so they are in a house where they share, and they are in the phase 3 portion of the program where they are with us for 6 months. And so that's really the extent of our extension right now within Kentucky. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much for presenting to our committee. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Next, Kay and I were discussing the agenda, and we thought that it might be worth revisiting our focus areas. You may recall that last year we did a brainstorming session of sorts, and people listed different possible priorities, and then we went around with the stickers and identified the 3 top focus areas. And so for 2023, they were housing supply shortages, disaster preparedness with the tornadoes and the flooding, and barriers to home ownership. So we just wanted to revisit that and see if it felt like those areas still held, or if there might be other priorities that were emerging. So I don't know, Kay, we weren't going to talk about that this meeting. Is that right? We were going to put a pin in it, but just wanted, to kind of get that in everybody's mind. Maybe as you go from now until the next meeting, to keep these in mind, and just to see if there's anything else that might be surfacing with you, so that you have time to think about it before the next meeting. And certainly if there's an urgent issue, you could always contact Kay or I in between the meeting. But we'll do that at our next meeting to visit our focus areas.
Yeah, and just to kind of frame up how we came to what was a smaller kind of reprioritization list. It wasn't last October, but it was actually October 2022. The time has gone by so quickly. We reached out and spoke with several nonprofit organizations to learn about, hey, in FY23 moving forward, what are your priorities? What are you all thinking about, or some of your most urgent concerns? And we got a really extended list. And what we did was we broke that list down into 7 buckets. In addition to talking to our partners, we also created 2 committees, two really work groups. And so one was the priority work group, and the other was the housing voucher work group. So again, this was a way to compile feedback and input. The policy and priority work group really looked at the HPAC charter, which we'll look more closely at next session. They looked at the list of community partner concerns. They looked at a lot of our one-time funding that is now becoming dismal. They talked about sustainability measures and actions that may be needed. And then our housing choice voucher group focused on landlord feedback. So we brought together active landlords that are participating with KHC funding and got some of their feedback. So, you know, in addition to what became really 4 priority buckets, we had this long list that we dwindled down. And then when we met again in the fall, we used stickers and we prioritized to get this list down. So that broader list was really, you know, housing shortage supply, of course, was at the top of mind for everyone. Eviction reform was actually on that list. Barriers to home ownership opportunities, which we heard from the urban leagues, Louisville and Lexington, a lot about. Disaster relief and recovery, homelessness, which we've talked again a lot about today. Advocacy for state funding. A lot of our partners wanted to just see the red tape that we needed more flexible dollars. And then economic development also was a growing concern, and with our last 3 years trending, you know, a lot of job growth. So we had this extended list. And as Bev mentioned, what you see on the screen are the top 3 priorities that were the outcomes of that brainstorming activity. So I hope that frames up. We wanted to bring that back to the top of your mind as a refresher. And as we look to, you know, this year, thinking about, do we want to revisit these focus groups? Do we want to invite nonprofits again to talk about their concerns? Do we want to understand more about the allocation plan and you know, our funds that are dwindling? What actions do we want to take? How do we want to compile information? And what information do we actually need? So, sorry to piggyback off of that, Bev, but
no, that's great. I appreciate it.
Okay, this is Phyllis Parker. I have a question.
Sure.
I know we talked about this before. Where does the committee stand in terms of being able to advocate in terms of legislation and that type of thing? It seems that the burden, it seems like the legislation right now is pretty abysmal when it comes to blaming people for being homeless and being on the street when it's a systemic issue. And I don't know if we're doing anything to kind of counter that with the legislators writing letters or talking with them. If are we doing education? What are we doing to educate them about the housing needs and why there's homelessness? And that people just don't live on the street because they want to choose to live on the street and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and Phyllis, that's a great question. We've had it before asked about signing petitions as a committee, but I'll defer to Bev, the chair, and Deputy Wendy Smith of Housing Programs.
Well, let me say, just from KHC's point of view, KHC is not allowed to really lobby. We have met with legislators, Phyllis, to talk about particularly the Safer Kentucky Act, because we feel like it imperils our funding and isn't addressing the root causes of homelessness, which is the housing market, and really trying to talk about that there might be contributing factors that make people more at risk for homelessness, but if there's plenty of housing, the risk of homelessness is very, very low. And I often use the example that I have a very big extended family in Marion County, and I have family members who are struggling with substance use disorder, and I have mentally ill family members, and they're all housed because either we have a lot of extra housing. We've got a trailer in our family. Everybody's lived in it at some point. And a lot of folks have owned their home for a long time, so they can ride out some of these, personal issues and things that make you at risk for homeless. So we met with legislators to talk with them about that, but we have to walk this line as KHC. That said, the Housing Policy Advisory Committee has its own logo and has membership and is a body required by statute. So this body could decide to send communications or do something, but I want to make it clear it cannot appear to be coming from KHC.
Or CHFS.
Right,
Okay.
from any state agency, right, but it can come from the Housing Policy Advisory Committee.
So having that clarification, is there anything more you would like to say or propose for that?
Well, I think we should be more actively involved because in petitioning and writing and providing more information to the legislature on these particular bills that they're putting out there, that has a really drastic effect on the homeless population, especially in Louisville. Well, and I don't know about, there are other areas, I shouldn't say especially Louisville, there are other areas too. Lexington and some of the other counties. There are a lot of people that are one paycheck away from living in their cars.
Agreed. So
I wonder if we could propose to or pull together a letter, or is it too late to, since it's already in session and in motion, these bills?
Adrian, would you have any insight input into that? Not still be on the call.
Adrian's dropped off the call.
Okay. I don't know the answer.
I can circle back to Adrian and pose that question. In addition, we'll be circulating the phone numbers and the flyer that she shared about how to reach offices, voice your concerns and opinion. But I'll check with Adrian. She has dropped off the call.
All right. And I'm conscious.
Yeah, Phyllis, and I'll circle back to you. But
I'm conscious of the time also. So we could either entertain a motion if you wanted to do that for HPAC, if there's time to send a letter regarding the bill, or we could urge individual members to take action. Like, I don't know if you want to suggest.
I suggest that we could do both, but in the interest of time right now, I think we should probably try to focus on doing both. But if we can't do both, we urge members to send a letter and send the information out to members via email.
Okay. All right.
Is that okay?
It sounded to me like the information would be going out with the minutes.
Yes, this packet will go out with the minutes.
Okay, or even
okay.
Can the slide that you sent, could it go out sooner, Kay, so that it's?
Yes.
Okay, just because of the timeliness issue.
Yep, at the close of this call.
Yes. Okay. All right. No, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
And then Kelly Reynolds, Kentucky's Weatherization Program.
All right. Hold on. Let me turn my camera on. Okay, now you get to see my face. Good afternoon, everyone. I am last but not least. I think I'm last anyway, except for a few discussion points. But we are, as many of you know, that we treat the Housing Policy Advisory Committee as our Policy Advisory Committee for the Weatherization Program as well. So we use you in a dual capacity. So I wanted to just give you a weatherization update, and then there is going to be something just kind of out there for discussion. So we'll go on. Right. So here's our update for kind of the last quarter since we met last time. I think Allison Craigmile was joining you last time in person to give you the update. But our bill revisions that we were waiting for at the last meeting, those were accepted by DOE. So those were approved in November, which what those did was it added Frontier Housing as a subgrantee for the weatherization program. They were already approved in our formula state plan. We just had to get them approved in our bill state plan. Good. So that went through with no problems at all. And then CETA, which is a subgrantee, a new subgrantee to us from Chicago. They operate out of Chicago and serve in the Illinois program. They are going to be a subgrantee in Kentucky under the bill funding to provide some multifamily weatherization throughout the state. So those were the two major changes in the bill revision that we did. We are in works right now with our legal folks to just get those contracts nailed down for CETA so that CETA can start working in Kentucky. Our weatherization team conducted Frontier's onboarding last week.
Thank you.
What that onboarding entails is that we have is really showing them how to do the program. So we spent a day and a half with them. It's still going to be a little bit before they're up and running, but those were really our first steps to getting them to that place. Our bill spending is very slow, which I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. It's very, very slow. Many of you know we have $52 million, 5 years to spend it. We basically didn't get the money until April, although the clock started ticking July 1, 2022. So we were already behind times, and now it's a bit slow in spending. We have to meet a 30% benchmark of expenditures in order to get another 5 years to spend that money. So we are on a short time frame. The LIHEAP money was awarded earlier this year, so we got it. We did receive it a little bit earlier in the timeline. Usually we get that around Christmas. We were able, I think we got that in November this year, so that we were able to get out subgrantee contracts the first week of December, which really gave them a super advanced start on spending a big portion of money. So that was really exciting. Workforce is a big issue. It's a huge issue for the weatherization agencies, for all of our subgrantees, whether they're a contractor agency or a crew-based agency. We really they need more people. So that's something for us to watch. And then we are currently working on a CERC grant that's sustainable. It's a sustainable energy grant with Department of Energy. It is meant to be more like a pilot grant where we will pilot certain territories, do some data measuring to see if we should if we can make a case to the Department of Energy to fund those energy measures. So we are looking at doing rooftop solar as one of those energy measures. And then the second energy measure we're looking at doing is window replacement. Many of you know, I say this all the time, the weatherization program is not a windows and door replacement program. That's what it started out as. That is not what it does now. Typically, we cannot do a window replacement. That's very, very rare. So we are writing this grant that would allow us to do window replacement in all of the homes in the subgrantee territories that this falls into. With this grant, we do have to serve disadvantaged communities defined by DOE. So we're working now to try to figure out what that looks like. All right, next slide. Workforce development. So mentioned that this is a challenge. We have come up kind of with a workforce development marketing plan of how we're going to go about trying to get more contractors and more crew into our workforce. But these are some things that you guys might be able to help us with. We need more contractors. We need general contractors who would be willing to be trained to do the weatherization installation work. We also need contractors in the multifamily realm who would be willing to be trained to do the multifamily weatherization work as well. That training looks about a week to learn how to just install measures, and then a week if you're going to serve in a crew leader capacity. Those are the kind of the major things we are asking. That we're trying to get some diversity amongst those contractors. So we're trying to figure out how do we contact NEB-WEB contractors so that we can build some diversity. We are also looking for what I call specialty contractors, that there's a high demand for these: plumbers, electricians, HVAC. We are loosening up our training requirements. So in order to get more plumbers, electricians, and HVAC contractors into our pipeline, on Thursday, we will be releasing a notice to all of our subgrantees that they do not have to adhere to the training requirements of the past. That as long as they are licensed to do plumbing work, electrical work, or HVAC work in the state of Kentucky, they need to not go under any additional training for weatherization as long as they are performing just those duties. If they are performing general
Christina Espinosa
is now exiting.
Okay, Kelly, it sounds like she is frozen. Looks like she is frozen.
Yeah. She's down for the count, I think.
And if she joins back, I'll let you know. It's likely she will turn off her camera. I will let you know.
All right. Thanks, Kay.
And if there's any questions about what we heard, please send those. I know she left off just talking about the effort to recruit more diversity, specifically contractors, and how our programs can reach those contractors, and not having to follow the previous requirements, but really just as long as you're doing specific work for weatherization, not needing additional training. So if there's questions or contacts, please send those to me at the close of this call regarding that, and I'll follow up and loop Kelly in for those questions. Ms. Yvonne?
This is Yvonne.
Mm-hmm.
I can't put information in the chat, but I was trying to let you all know that we have a contractor resource center here in the community in West End, and it's geared toward minority contractors. So any way that we can offer training in conjunction with you all, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, if you could send me that, I'd like to forward it on to Kelly.
Okay.
And Yvonne, I was thinking of you. I was hoping you were still on the call. So yeah, anyone that has questions about that effort or contacts, please send those to me to my email, and I will loop in Kelly if she is not able to rejoin the call. So yeah.
All right. Thanks, Kay. Finally, does anyone have any informational items or announcements? All right. Our next meeting will be in person, April 23rd. So we'll see everyone then. Thanks for joining us. Is there a motion to adjourn? Do we need a motion? A motion to adjourn with a name attached to it, please.
Zach Worsham, so moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All right. So the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. So Bev, next time, let me know specific if I need